Section 7 of A Guidebook of Art, Architecture, and Historic Interests in Pennsylvania, edited by Margaretta Archambault. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Tatiana Chichilla. The Commonwealth, or State of Pennsylvania, Penn's Woods, Part 6. Other Places of Historic Interest. Residence of John Fitch in 1791, 462 North 2nd Street. In 1790, John Fitch's steamboats made regular trips. Petty's Island was used as a port for the Perseverance, one of the 5 steamboats that Fitch constructed for use on the Delaware, before Robert Fulton placed his Clermont on the Hudson. It was blown up at moorings on this island. Residence of Edgar Allan Poe from 1843 to 44, west side of 7th Street, above Spring Garden, old number 234. Bush Hill Mansion, on west side of 17th Street below Spring Garden, erected by Andrew Hamilton in 1740, front lawn sloping to Vine Street, was scene of a 4th of July celebration held in 1788, after the last of the 9 states that made the Constitution effective came in. The procession dispersed here at Union Green. James Wilson, as signer of the Constitution, delivered an oration, and there were other ceremonies. Springottsbury, built 1736–39, called after the name of William Penn's first wife, manor house of the Penns, burnt in 1808. Part of site is now occupied by the Preston Retreat, 18th Street below Spring Garden. Northeast corner of Broad and Walnut Streets, site of Vauxhall Garden. A ball was given here in honor of General Andrew Jackson after his victory at New Orleans, January 8, 1841. Penn Treaty Park, Beach Street and East Columbia Avenue. Knight's Wharf at edge of Green Street and Northern Liberties. Near here, Poole's Bridge crossed Pegg's Run at Front Street. It was named after one Poole, a friend, whose mansion was here. Recalls the Mischianza invitation. The favor of your meeting the subscribers to the Mischianza at Knight's Wharf, near Poole's Bridge, tomorrow at 3:30 is desired. Signed, Henry Calder. Sunday, 17th May, 1778, for River Parade to the Garden. Preparations for this magnificent entertainment, the erection of numerous and vast pavilions around the Wharton Mansion, and their decorations by Andre, Delancey, and other gallant officers, was the talk of the town for weeks. The Wharton Mansion, Walnut Grove, used by a family in the summer, was where 5th Street near Washington Avenue is now. The British had possession there in the spring of 1778. Miss Peggy Shippen's portrait was sketched by Major Andre in Mischianza costume. Philadelphia then excelled all other colonial cities in size, culture, and importance. Southwark Shot Tower, built 1809, Carpenter Street between Front and 2nd, first plant in the United States which made bullets. Site of Hill's Shipyard, Queen Street Wharf below Catherine Street. Original Swedish houses on both sides of Queen Street below Front. Site of United States First Navy Yard, 1201 South Front Street. Obelisk northeast corner 23rd and Market Streets gives a history of the old Market Street Bridge, built 1801 to 05, inscriptions to be recut. Historic Germantown. Colonial and revolutionary suburb 6 miles from Philadelphia, founded in 1683 by Francis Daniel Pastorius from Sommerhausen, Germany, one of the best educated men in the colonies. He had received the degree of Doctor of Laws at Nuremberg, was a member of the Assembly from 1687 to 91. Earliest settlers were Friends and German religionists, highly cultivated and skilled in weaving, paper-making, printing, and other trades. First railroad in America to use steam was the Philadelphia and Reading to Germantown in 1832. First successful locomotive made in America was Matthias Baldwin's Old Ironsides, used on this road, only taken out in fair weather. Germantown Avenue follows an old Indian trail, made a turnpike in 1800, on which are still many historic houses of quaint colonial architecture. Rough native stone with overhanging hipped roofs and a projecting pent over doorstep. Stenton, built in 1728, brick, colonial, near Wayne Junction, residence of James Logan, secretary to William Penn, 1727 to 34. President of Council, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. His guests were Franklin, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Lafayette, John Randolph. Occupied by General Washington, August 1777, on way to the Battle of Brandywine, by General Howe during Battle of Germantown. Washington dined here with Dr. Logan, July 1787, while the Constitutional Convention was in session. There is a curious underground passage from cellar to stable. The stream on the place was named Wingohocking for an Indian chief, who himself took the name of Logan, now in charge of the Pennsylvania Society of Colonial Dames, who have refurnished it with original pieces and relics of the Logan family. Open daily 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., excepting Sunday and Thursday. Admission fee 15 cents. Northwest corner of Apsley Street and Germantown Avenue, Loudon, built in 1801, residence of Thomas Armat, now occupied by Armat and Logan descendants. Many wounded Americans died and were buried here in the Battle of Germantown. 4825 Germantown Avenue, house built by Christopher Ottinger in 1781, walls 2 feet thick, rafters, unhewn trees. His son, born here in 1804, was Captain Douglas Ottinger in the United States Revenue Marine. He invented the Ottinger Life Car, which in 1849 equipped 8 life-saving stations on the New Jersey coast. 4810 Germantown Avenue, site of Wagner House, built 1747. Used as hospital after the Battle of Germantown. Stable doors were taken for operating tables. Many died and were buried in a trench near the rear. 4908 Germantown Avenue, built in 1760, was bought 1828 by John S. Henry, whose son, Alexander Henry, was 3 times mayor of Philadelphia and a member of Congress. Northeast corner of East Logan and Germantown Avenue, Lower or Hood's burial ground, presented to borough in 1693 by Jan Streepers. John F. Watson placed stones over graves of General Agnew and Colonel Byrd, British officers killed in Battle of Germantown. See burial grounds. 5109 Germantown Avenue, site of Tonus Kunder's home. Part of original north wall is still standing. First meetings of the Society of Friends in Germantown were held here, and a public protest against slavery was made in 1688. The paper, written and signed by Pastorius and 3 others, was forwarded to the yearly meeting in Burlington. Tonus Kunder, by trade a dyer, was the ancestor of the Conrad and Conrad families, also of Sir Samuel Cunard, founder of the Cunard steamship line. He died in 1729. South side of Mannheim Street, west of Germantown Avenue, residence of Jacques-Marie Rosset, who came to America in 1792, first introduced the tomato plant into Germantown. His granddaughter was the wife of Anthony J. Drexel, Esquire. Opposite 153 Mannheim Street was Taggart's Field. British infantry encamped here. Mannheim Street, corner of Morris Street. Germantown Cricket Club, organized in 1854. William Roch Wister was the first American to study the science and points of the play and teach it. He was known as the father of American cricket. First American Field, Belfield Cricket Club, Stenton and Olney Avenues, was the Wister Pasture and Orchard. Second Club, Young America, Field, rear of residence of Thomas A. Newhall, Esquire, Mannheim and Hansberry Streets. They consolidated in 1889. Queen Lane, west of Pulaski Avenue, site of Potter's Field in 1765, a burial place for all strangers, Negroes, and mulattoes as die in any part of Germantown. 5106 Germantown Avenue, residence of Commodore James Barron, Commandant Philadelphia Navy Yard in 1842, captain of the Chesapeake, when captured by the British ship Leopard. In 1807 he killed Commodore Stephen Decatur in a duel at Bladensburg, Maryland. 5157 Germantown Avenue, residence and printing office, now altered, of Philip R. Fries, publisher of the Village Telegraph in 1830, later the Germantown Telegraph. St. Stephen's Methodist Church, opened in 1856, site of Frederick Fraley's carpenter shop. Gun carriages were made here for the American Army. Washington was a frequent visitor. 5140 Germantown Avenue, residence of Gilbert Stuart, 1794–95. The barn was used as his studio. Portrait of Washington, now in the Athenaeum of Boston, was painted here. Also a full-length portrait of Corn Planter, the Indian chief. 5253–55 Germantown Avenue, formerly one dwelling. Owen Wister, novelist, was born here July 14, 1860, son of Dr. Owen J. and Sarah Butler Wister. His mother was a daughter of Pierce and Fanny Kemble Butler. 5219 Germantown Avenue, residence of John Bringhurst, carriage maker, 1775–95, a founder of the Germantown Academy. In 1780 he made a chariot for General Washington, whose arms and crest were properly displayed, cost 210 pounds in gold. Martha Washington rode to Mount Vernon in it. Colonel Byrd, British officer, died here. 5249 Germantown Avenue, built by Dr. Owen Wister, was his residence from 1860 to 70. He then moved to Butler Place on York Road. 5253 Germantown Avenue, site of Christopher Sauer's residence and printing office, who arrived in Germantown 1724, secured a printing outfit from Germany in 1738, published the first German newspaper in America 1739, printed the first Bible in European language in America 1743. Christopher Sauer, Jr. was bishop of the Dunkard Church 1753. 5242–44 Germantown Avenue, site of Indian Queen Tavern, which gave the name to Queen Street. 5261 Germantown Avenue, erected by John Wister in 1744. Stones were quarried from a hill in the rear, joists from Oaks and Wister's Woods. Family removed to Penlyn during occupancy by British, where Sally Wister, a daughter, wrote her charming diary. The British general, James Agnew, lived here at the time of the Battle of Germantown, was brought back wounded and died here, now owned and occupied by Wister descendants. 5300 Germantown Avenue, corner of Queen Street, parsonage of Trinity Lutheran Church, was one of the Sauer properties. The first type cast in America, in 1772, was made in the cellar of this house. Church built 1837. Many well-known Germantowners lie in the graveyard. 5275–77 Germantown Avenue, Germantown National Bank, 1825–68. John Fanning Watson was cashier. He lived at 5277. Building was occupied by Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of State, and Edmund Randolph, Attorney General of the United States, in 1793 during the Yellow Fever in Philadelphia. Northeast corner of Germantown Avenue and Coulter Street, St. Luke's Protestant Episcopal Church, First Episcopal Church in Germantown, built 1811. Land given by Thomas Armott, Esquire. John Fanning Watson, the annalist, is buried in the churchyard. Northwest corner of Germantown Avenue and Coulter Street, Friends Meeting, land given by Jacob Shoemaker, 50 acres in 1693. In the library is a photograph of the first protest against slavery. 5425 Germantown Avenue, Masonic Lodge Room, site residence of A. Bronson Alcott, where Louisa May Alcott, authoress, was born. 5430 Germantown Avenue, residence of Captain Albert Ashmead of the Philadelphia County Troop, who commanded a troop of cavalry and escorted General Lafayette from Bristol to Philadelphia in 1824. French Embassy during 1793. 5434 Germantown Avenue, residence of John Ashmead, father of Captain Albert Ashmead, who designed and made the first carriages known as Germantown wagons in 1824 in the shop at rear of house. Also first plows with wrought iron moldboard. Lafayette purchased 4 for his Lagrange farm in France. Market Square, Battle of Germantown fought here, September 25, 1777. Here was the market house, prison, stocks, and public scales. In February 1764, several hundred Paxtang boys from banks of the Conestoga and Susquehanna rivers encamped here. They came east to murder the peaceful Moravian Indians sheltered in Philadelphia, and were met by Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Willing, Benjamin Chew, and others who persuaded them to return. Monument erected in 1883 to Civil War soldiers and sailors. Pedestal with tablets containing names of Germantown soldiers and sailors. At base are 2 coast defense mortars from the Civil War, 2 bronze cannon on wheels from the United States Arsenal. The enclosure is of musket barrels and bayonets used during Civil War, and broken cannon from British frigate Augusta, sunk by American batteries during Revolutionary War. Market Square Presbyterian Church, originally German Reformed, built in 1733. Count Zinzendorf preached his first sermon in America here, December 1741, and last on leaving, June 1742. Washington worshipped here while living in the Morris House opposite. A battalion of 9th Virginia, captured by the British, was confined here. 5442 Germantown Avenue, Morris House, Washington's summer residence in 1793-94, built by David Deschler, 1772-73. Sir William Howe occupied it after the battle in 1777. In 1804, it was bought by Mr. Perot for a country residence, and became the property of his son-in-law, Mr. Morris. The yard is kept in the simple elegance of colonial times. 5450 Germantown Avenue, in 1790 residence of Thomas Armott, who lived later at Loudon. 5452 Germantown Avenue, erected in 1711 by John Ashmead, great-grandfather of Captain Albert Ashmead. Front rebuilt 1790. 5454 Germantown Avenue, occupied in 1742 by Count Zinzendorf. Commencement of Moravian Seminary, now in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Saving Fund Building, site, residence of Jacob Tellner, first stone house built in Germantown. William Penn present at the roof raising. He once preached here. Schoolhouse Lane in Green Street, Germantown Academy, built 1759. Colonial, native stone, founded by Christopher Sauer and others of German birth to furnish education in English, High Dutch, and the German language. It has always held high rank as a school. The bell was brought to Philadelphia in 1774 in the tea ship Polly. The cargo was not allowed to land. It was taken back to England and returned here when the war was ended. Telescope used by Washington during battle, when the building was used as a hospital, is here. Several British soldiers were buried in the yard. Cricket was first played in America here by British officers. Bank of Pennsylvania was brought here, escorted by McPherson's Blues in 1798 during the second yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia. Gymnasium on Green Street, modern. On Schoolhouse Lane farther west is cricket field of the William Penn Charter School. Northeast corner of Schoolhouse Lane and Germantown Avenue, Mutual Fire Insurance Company. In the office is Shag Rag, an old hand engine, imported from England 1764. Site De La Plaine House. Whitefield preached from balcony to about 500 people in the square. Northwest corner of Germantown Avenue and Schoolhouse Lane, Germantown Bank, chartered 1813. Site of Germantown Library in 1806. Used by United States Bank in 1798. Escorted from Philadelphia by body of light horse. 56, 16, 18, and 20 Germantown Avenue. Site King of Prussia Tavern in 1757. The sign was painted by Gilbert Stewart. A stagecoach with awning ran from King of Prussia to the George Inn, 2nd and Arch Streets, 3 times a week. Germantown Avenue north of Chelton Avenue, Vernon Park, residence of John Wister, member of Congress until 1883, now belongs to the city. Mansion, built in 1803, is used as a museum by the Site Relic Society. Marble statue of John Wister near the door, made in Italy, given by his son, Jones Wister, who posed for the figure. Free library building and park. South side of Haynes Street, east of Chew, still stands a farmhouse, residence of Christopher Ludwig in 1777, appointed Baker General to American Army, said to be the original of Harvey Birch and Cooper's novel, The Spy. Southeast corner, Germantown Avenue and High Street, site of the Morris Little House, was the residence of Dr. Christopher Witt, physician, botanist, musician, artist, astronomer, poet. Originally one of the hermits of the Wissahickon, friend of John Bartram and Francis Daniel Pastorius. An oil portrait of Johannes Kelpius, painted by Dr. Witt in 1705, is said to be the first oil portrait painted in America, now at Pennsylvania Historical Society. He started the first botanical garden in America, 20 years earlier than Bartram's. Now yard of high school building. South side of High Street, 2 squares east from Germantown Avenue, St. Michael's Protestant Episcopal Church. Window of St. Michael after Guido Reni by William and Annie Lee Willett. Grave of Dr. Christopher Witt is here. Died in 1765, aged 90. Site of Old Warner Burial Ground. British and American soldiers were buried here. Methodist Church, 6019 Germantown Avenue. Site Green Tree Tavern in 1748, kept by Francis Daniel Pastorius until 1754. General Anthony Wayne came this far, time of battle. Pastorius was the hero in Whittier's Pennsylvania Pilgrim. Died in 1719, was buried probably in the Friends Burial Ground, Germantown Avenue above Coulter Street. Southwest corner of Walnut Lane and Germantown Avenue, Wick, built in 1690, thought to be the oldest house now in Germantown, was used as hospital and operating room after battle. Lafayette was entertained here July 1825. 6043 Germantown Avenue, southeast corner of Walnut Lane, was bought in 1775 by Dr. William Shippen as a summer home. Center of fierce skirmish during battle. Pennsylvania Manual Training School was here under Dr. George Junkin, who was afterwards president of Washington and Lee University. His daughter was married to General Stonewall Jackson. In 1832, Dr. Junkin was president of Lafayette College, Easton. In 1851, this property was bought by Charlotte Cushman, actress. Germantown Avenue above Herman Street, Mennonite Meeting House, founded 1708. Present building erected 1770. William Rittenhouse, first pastor. Brigadier General Agnew was mortally wounded near here. 6205 Germantown Avenue, site of house built in 1738 by Dirk Kieser, a silk merchant, who came from Amsterdam in 1688. 6239 Germantown Avenue was known as Washington Tavern in 1793. 6306 Germantown Avenue, Johnson House in thickest of fight. Time of battle, the British swarmed through and cleared everything edible. Family fled to the cellar. Germantown Avenue, north of Washington Lane, built 1775, Concord Schoolhouse, now Charter Oak Library. North of Library is the Upper Burial Ground, probably the oldest existing stone to a German in Pennsylvania. Cornelius Tyson, buried in 1716. Graves of the Lippard family are here, ancestors of George Lippard, author. American Soldiers Memorial Stone was erected by John Fanning Watson. Southeast corner of Germantown Avenue and Duval Street, site Pomona, residence Colonel Thomas Forrest, artillery officer, later member of the 16th and 17th Congress. 6338 Germantown Avenue, site the Ship House, built 1760, had representation of a ship on south gable, rear, site of First Public Hall in Germantown. Northeast corner of Germantown Avenue and Johnson Street, Chew House, Cliveden, known as the Germantown Battlefield, built in 1760 by Benjamin Chew, Attorney General of the province, member of council, later Chief Justice. Colonial, solid, and heavy masonry, forming admirable fortification, was the scene of most important battle in Germantown. October 4th, 1777. Family were away, house partly furnished was left in charge of servants. The building was battered with bullets, holes still shown in the doors. Northwest corner of Germantown Avenue and Johnson Streets, Uppsala, one of the finest examples of colonial architecture, built in 1798 by John Johnson, is still occupied by his descendants. During the battle, Americans put their cannon in the yard to fire on the Chew House opposite. Northeast corner of Germantown Avenue and Upsall Street, Billmeyer House, built in 1727. Washington stood on the horse block, telescope in hand, to penetrate the smoke of battle and discover force of the enemy at Chew House. Woodwork bears marks of bullets and attempts by soldiers to set it on fire. Bought by Michael Billmeyer in 1788, a celebrated German painter, whose business plant was here. Tablet placed by Site and Relic Society. 6611 Germantown Avenue, parsonage of Dunkard Meeting House, said to be over 200 years old. Near it, in the battle, General Nash was mortally wounded, and Major Witherspoon, son of Reverend John Witherspoon, president of Princeton College, killed by the same cannonball. They were buried in St. Michael's Lutheran Churchyard. 6613 Germantown Avenue, Mother Church of the Brethren, or Dunkards in America, who came here in 1719. Church was organized by Peter Becker, first pastor, in 1723. Present building, erected 1770, has tablet to Christopher Sauer in the Meeting House. He published the first American quarto edition of the Bible, 1743. In the graveyard is buried Alexander Mack, founder of the Dunkard sect in Germany, who came to America 1729. Southeast corner of Germantown Avenue and Philhelena Street, St. Michael's Lutheran Church, founded 1737. In 1742, Reverend Henry Melchior Muhlenberg had charge here, and of St. John's in Philadelphia. Pews were placed in 1750. During the battle, the organ was destroyed by British soldiers, who ran along the streets blowing the pipes. In the graveyard is buried Christopher Ludwig and other patriots. 6749 Germantown Avenue, residence George Hesser, Elizabeth Drinker's journal, written while staying here in 1793 during yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia, gives interesting local details of life in Germantown. 7301 Germantown Avenue, opposite Allen's Lane, Lutheran Theological Seminary, site Mount Airy, summer residence of Chief Justice William Allen. Lafayette was entertained here. Later a school was conducted by Benjamin C. Constant, the American Classical and Military Institute. General Meade and his brother, also General Beauregard, were educated here. Southeast corner of Germantown and Gowan Avenues, now part of Lutheran Theological Seminary, residence in 1792 of Joseph Miller, whose daughter was married to James Gowan. Their son, Franklin B. Gowan, was born and lived here many years. Also his brother, James E. Gowan. 7406 Germantown Avenue, Mount Airy, Pennsylvania Institution for Deaf, Semi-Deaf, and Blind Deaf, founded in 1820 by David G. Seixas, who gathered deaf street roamers in his home, taught, fed, and clothed them. A school was planned, Bishop White presiding, constitution adopted, and directors chosen. Now a splendidly equipped trade teaching department for boys and girls. Articulation and lip reading taught. Architecture, Norman. Interesting places west, not on Germantown Avenue. Queen Lane, 2 blocks west on Wissahickon Avenue. Carlton, residence of Henry Hall, Washington's headquarters, August 1777, and 2 days in September, before and immediately after the Battle of Brandywine, when the British occupied Germantown. The Hessian detachment encamped from here to the Schuylkill River. General Kifanson's headquarters, beyond the house toward Queen Lane Reservoir, is a granite monument erected by Sons of the Revolution in 1895 to commemorate the earlier encampment of the American Army at this point. Corner of Rittenhouse Street and Lincoln Drive, birthplace of David Rittenhouse, Pennsylvania's first and greatest astronomer, born April 8, 1732, house erected in 1707. His grandfather, William Rittenhouse, came to America in 1690, first papermaker in America, mill located near the house. Places of interest east. East Logan Street, across Wissahickon Avenue, the picturesque Wakefield Mills and residence of Thomas and Sarah Fisher, née Logan, in 1795, granddaughter of James Logan of Stenton. Passing Wakefield, Old York Road is soon reached. Jewish Hospital on the right. Old York Road on left, residence of Pierce Butler, bought in 1812. He was a member of the Constitutional Convention and senator from South Carolina. His son, Pierce Butler, Jr., married Fanny Kemble. Present residence of Owen Wister, their grandson. The British outpost was stationed near here. Church Lane and Wingohocking Creek, site of Robert's Mill, built in 1683, first in the country. Built by Richard Townsend, a passenger on the Welcome, with William Penn. Back of Mill, British had a small redoubt guarding their encampment in Germantown. Northeast corner of Church Lane and Dunton Street, Spencer Farmhouse. Thomas Godfrey, inventor of the quadrant, was born here. He died in 1749. Northwest corner of Haynes Street and Limekiln Turnpike, Philadelphia National Cemetery, 13 acres, founded in 1885. Soldiers of the War of the Rebellion are buried here. Farther along Limekiln Turnpike, left wing of Washington's army moved down this road, and a sharp encounter occurred with an outpost of the British. End of Section 7.